The strange lights in the night sky caught Jake's attention as he drove his forest ranger truck through the dark woods. At first, he thought they were just stars, but stars didn't move like that. They didn't flash purple and blue, and they definitely didn't crash into the forest with a boom that shook the ground. Jake stopped his truck and grabbed his flashlight. He knew he should call for backup, but something told him to check it out first. The crash site wasn't far, maybe half a mile into the woods. As he walked between the tall trees, a soft purple glow lit up the forest ahead of him. The night was unusually quiet. No birds sang, no insects chirped. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Jake's boots crunched on fallen leaves as he moved closer to the strange light. His heart beat faster with each step. Then he saw her. A girl lay on the ground near a fallen tree. But she wasn't like any girl Jake had ever seen before. Her skin had a slight purple tint that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Strange, beautiful marks covered her arms, swirling patterns that gave off a faint light. Her clothes looked like they were made of some kind of metal fabric that shimmered even in the dark. She was hurt. Jake could see that right away. Cuts and bruises marked her purple-tinted skin, and she held her side in pain. Small pieces of strange metal and broken devices lay scattered around her. Jake rushed forward to help. As he got closer, the girl's eyes snapped open. They were the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. Deep purple with specks of light that looked like tiny stars. She tried to move away from him, but the pain stopped her. "It's okay," Jake said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The girl spoke, but her words weren't any language Jake had ever heard. They sounded like music, like wind chimes in a soft breeze. She tried to reach for one of the broken devices near her, but couldn't quite grab it. Jake noticed something incredible as he knelt beside her. The smaller cuts on her skin were healing right before his eyes, closing up and disappearing like magic. But the bigger injuries remained, and they clearly caused her a lot of pain. Suddenly, bright lights appeared in the sky above them. They weren't like the purple and blue lights from before. These were harsh and white, sweeping back and forth across the forest, like they were searching for something or someone. The girl's eyes widened in fear when she saw the lights. She grabbed Jake's arm with surprising strength and pointed deeper into the forest, away from the searching beams. She was trying to tell him something, but he couldn't understand her musical language. Jake made a quick decision. Someone was looking for this girl, and judging by how scared she looked, they didn't have good intentions. He helped her stand up, letting her lean on him for support. She quickly grabbed one of the strange devices from the ground and clutched it to her chest, like it was precious. The searchlights were getting closer. Jake could now hear a low humming sound, like giant bees in the sky. The girl's grip on his arm tightened, and her glowing marks pulsed brighter with fear. "My cabin's not far," Jake whispered, though he wasn't sure if she understood. "We can hide there." As they moved through the dark forest, Jake noticed more strange things about the girl. Her footsteps made no sound at all, even on the crunchy leaves. The air around her smelled like flowers after rain, and whenever they passed plants or trees, they seemed to lean toward her, like flowers reaching for the sun. The humming grew louder. Jake looked back and saw something massive moving through the sky above the trees. It was too dark to see clearly, but it looked nothing like any aircraft he'd ever seen. The girl stumbled, and Jake caught her before she fell. Her skin felt warm, almost hot, and her glowing marks were starting to fade. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, she needed help. And for some reason, fate had chosen Jake to provide it. As they hurried through the dark woods toward his cabin, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. What he didn't know was just how right he was, because the injured girl he was helping wasn't just a strange visitor from another world. She was so much more than that. Jake watched in amazement as the strange girl pulled out the small device she grabbed during their escape. It was about the size of a phone but looked like it was made of liquid metal. The surface rippled and shifted colors in the dim light of his cabin's living room. The girl sat cross-legged on his old couch, her glowing marks casting soft purple shadows on the walls. She held the device close to her mouth and spoke those musical words again. The device hummed and pulsed with light. Then she did something that made Jake's jaw drop. She pointed to different objects in the room and started naming them in perfect English, though her accent had a melodic quality that made ordinary words sound like songs. "Chair," she said, pointing. "Table. Window. Light." Her voice grew more confident with each word. The device in her hand glowed brighter every time she spoke. "That's incredible," Jake said, forgetting for a moment that she might not understand him. But she did. Her star-filled eyes lit up. "Thank you. This is Translation Matrix. Very basic model. For diplomatic missions." She frowned slightly. Not supposed to share technology details. Jake sat down slowly in his old armchair, trying to process what was happening. "You're learning our language right now, as we talk?" She nodded, then winced and touched her side where her worst injury was. Though her smaller wounds had healed, the bigger ones were taking longer. Matrix analyzes speech patterns, grammar structures, cultural context, updates my neural pathways. She paused, concentrating. "Your language is simple compared to many. No offense meant." "None taken," Jake said with a small laugh. "What's your name?" "I'm Jake." She hesitated, looking at her device as if checking something. "You may call me Lyra. It is close enough to my true name in your language." Thunder rumbled outside, making Lyra jump. Her marks flashed brighter for a moment, and nearby plants on Jake's windowsill suddenly bloomed, despite it being the middle of the night. "Sorry," she said, noticing his surprised look. "Bioenergy sometimes leaks when I am startled. These injuries make control difficult." She touched one of her glowing marks thoughtfully. "Your plants are very responsive. Much life force." Jake had so many questions, but he noticed how tired she looked. The translation device seemed to be taking a lot of her energy. Still, there was one thing he had to know. "Those lights in the sky. They're looking for you, aren't they? Who are they?" Lyra's face darkened. "Bad people. Want to start war." She straightened her posture suddenly, and Jake noticed how elegant her movements were, even when injured. Like a dancer, or someone used to being watched. "Cannot say more. Puts you in danger." A noise outside made them both freeze. Footsteps on Jake's porch, then a knock at the door. Lyra's marks dimmed instantly, and she moved with surprising speed behind the couch. "Mr. Thompson," a voice called. "Forest Service. We've had reports of unusual activity in your sector." Jake looked at Lyra, who shook her head frantically. The translation device in her hand showed strange symbols that kept changing. "Just a moment," Jake called out. He quickly grabbed a blanket and tossed it to Lyra, who covered her glowing marks. Then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Small drops of silvery liquid, definitely not human blood, had fallen from Lyra's wounds onto his floor, and they were glowing faintly. Another knock, more insistent this time. "Mr. Thompson, we need to speak with you immediately." Jake grabbed a rag and quickly wiped up the silvery drops, his mind racing. As he straightened up, he saw Lyra pressing some buttons on her device. The symbols on its screen turned red. "Jake," she whispered, her musical voice tense with fear. "Those are not your Forest Service." "How do you know?" "Matrix analyzing voice patterns. Those are not human voices. They are using technology similar to mine." Her purple eyes met his, full of worry. "They are hunters. Assassins." The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then Jake heard a sound that made his skin crawl. The door lock starting to melt. Lyra stood up, her wounds seemingly forgotten as determination crossed her face. "I am sorry, Jake. I did not want to involve you in this." She touched her translation device, and it transformed, spreading up her arm like liquid metal to form what looked like armor. "But now I must protect you." Because you protected me. The door burst open, revealing 3 figures that looked human, almost. But their movements were too smooth, their smiles too wide. And their eyes. Their eyes were completely black. Lyra stepped forward, her marks blazing with purple light. The plants around the cabin suddenly grew at impossible speeds, vines and branches crashing through the windows to form barriers. "Stay behind me," she said to Jake, her voice now carrying an authority that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. "And know that after this, nothing in your life will be the same." The false Forest Service agents pulled out devices similar to Lyra's, but larger, more weapon-like. Outside, the storm grew stronger and more lights appeared in the sky. The night was far from over. The fight was over in minutes. Lyra moved like lightning, her armor flowing and shifting as she dodged the assassin's energy blasts. The plants she controlled wrapped around the intruders, holding them tight while their weapons clattered to the floor. But victory came at a cost. Lyra stumbled, her glowing marks flickering like dying lights. Jake caught her before she fell, noticing how her armor retracted back into the small device on her arm. "Their weapons," she gasped, pointing. "Destroy them. Quickly." Jake grabbed the fallen weapons and threw them into his fireplace. To his surprise, they melted like ice in summer, leaving only small pools of liquid metal that evaporated into nothing. The captured assassins struggled against their plant restraints. Up close, their disguises weren't perfect. Their skin had a metallic sheen, and their movements were too mechanical. "You cannot hide forever, Your Majesty," one of them said in a voice that sounded like grinding gears. "The Shadowtech Empire will never accept peace with your kind." Jake turned to Lyra, who was leaning against the wall, her face pale, but her expression royal and proud. "Your Majesty?" he asked quietly. Lyra sighed, and suddenly she looked different. Her posture changed, becoming more regal. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and her glowing marks formed patterns that looked like a crown. "I suppose you deserve the truth now," she said, her musical voice carrying new authority. "I am Queen Lyra Asilith of the Starlight Empire, guardian of the 7 stars, and keeper of the bioharmony." She looked at Jake with sad eyes. "I did not mean to deceive you, but my title brings danger." Before Jake could respond, a new sound filled the air, like crystal bells ringing. Lyra's face lit up with relief. "My royal guard," she said. "They finally found me." The roof of Jake's cabin seemed to turn transparent, revealing a massive ship hovering above. It was beautiful, made of what looked like crystal and living metal, with gardens growing along its sides. Beams of pure white light shot down, and figures appeared. Tall, elegant beings with the same glowing marks as Lyra, but in different colors. "My queen," said their leader, kneeling before Lyra. "We've been searching the galaxy for you." He looked at the captured assassins with disgust. Shadowtech agents. They'd gone too far this time. "Rise, Captain Solaris," Lyra commanded. "This human, Jake, saved my life and fought by my side. He is to be treated with full royal honors." Jake watched in amazement as the royal guards bowed to him. But something was bothering him. "Why were you alone?" he asked Lyra. "Why didn't you have guards with you when you crashed?" Lyra's face darkened. "Because this was supposed to be a secret peace mission. I was meeting with moderate leaders from the Shadowtech Empire. Someone leaked the location." Her purple eyes flashed with anger. "There is a traitor in my court." Captain Solaris stepped forward. "My queen, we must return to the ship. Our presence here risks exposing this planet to interstellar politics. The Earth is not ready." "Not ready," Jake said. "We just fought off alien assassins with plant powers and liquid metal weapons. I think that ship has sailed." To everyone's surprise, Lyra laughed. It was a beautiful sound, like wind chimes in a spring breeze. "He has a point, Captain." She turned to Jake. "Earth is more remarkable than my people believed. Its nature, its life force, and its people." She touched one of the plants that had helped in the fight. It bloomed instantly. Suddenly, alarms started blaring from the ship above. Captain Solaris received a message through a crystal in his armor. "My queen," he said urgently. "Shadowtech warships have entered the solar system. They're heading straight for Earth. They mean to force your hand. Either surrender to them, or watch them attack this planet." The captured assassins laughed their mechanical laughs. "You see," one said, "peace was never an option." Lyra straightened up, despite her injuries. Her marks blazed with purple fire, and her royal armor reformed, more magnificent than before. "They think they can threaten a world under my protection." The plants around her pulsed with energy. They forget who they're dealing with. She turned to Jake, and her expression softened. "I must ask more of you, though you've already done so much. My ship can defend this planet, but we need a safe place to coordinate from. Somewhere hidden, connected to nature's power. You know these forests better than anyone." Jake thought quickly. "The old mines," he said. "They run deep under the mountains, and they're full of crystal formations. Would that work?" Lyra smiled, and her marks glowed brighter. "Perfect." She turned to her guards. "Prepare for battle. And send word to the Empire. Their queen is not running anymore." As the royal guards transported them to the ship, Jake looked at his ruined cabin. Just yesterday, he'd been a simple forest ranger. Now he was helping an alien queen defend Earth from invasion. "Jake," Lyra said softly, touching his arm, "I am sorry about your home." He looked at her, at the stars shining in her eyes, at the way plants reached for her like she was their son. "Something tells me life was about to get a lot more interesting anyway." Above them, the crystal ship hummed with power, preparing for war. And somewhere in the darkness of space, their enemies were coming. The real battle was about to begin. The old mining tunnels echoed with strange sounds as Jake led Lyra and her royal guard deeper underground. Their crystalline armor cast rainbow reflections on the rough walls, and the queen's glowing marks provided enough light to see by. Behind them, they could hear the heavy footsteps of Shadowtech forces who had tracked them to the mine entrance. "The main cavern is just ahead," Jake whispered, pointing to where the tunnel widened. "It's full of quartz crystals. The miners never touched them because they were too big to move." Lyra's eyes lit up when they entered the cavern. Massive crystal formations rose from floor to ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and smaller crystals covered the walls like stars. "This is perfect," she said, her musical voice filled with excitement. "These crystals, they're similar to the ones we use in our bioharmony technology." Captain Solaris checked the readings on his armor's display. "My queen, the crystals are amplifying your energy signature. We can use this." But before they could plan further, the first explosion rocked the cavern. Shadowtech forces had reached them. A dozen soldiers with liquid metal armor that made them look like walking shadows. Their leader stepped forward, his armor rippling like oil on water. "Surrender, Queen Lyra Asilith," he demanded in that mechanical voice. "Our warships are positioned to strike Earth's major cities. This primitive world need not suffer for your stubbornness." Jake watched as Lyra transformed. Gone was any trace of the injured girl he'd found in the forest. She stood tall, her royal armor gleaming, purple marks blazing with power. The crystals around her began to pulse with the same light. "Commander Vex," she said, her voice carrying such authority that even the crystals seemed to vibrate. "Still fighting others' battles? Or did they promote you after you betrayed your honor?" The Shadowtech commander's armor bristled with sharp edges. "Honor? Your empire speaks of honor while hoarding the secrets of bioharmony, while keeping other worlds dependent on your protection. You know that's not true," Lyra said. "Bioharmony can't be hoarded. It must be earned through understanding life itself. Your empire's attempt to steal and weaponize it will only bring destruction." The crystals were glowing brighter now, resonating with Lyra's energy. Jake noticed small plants beginning to grow from cracks in the cavern walls. Underground flowers that shouldn't exist, glowing with their own inner light. Commander Vex raised his weapon. "Enough talk. Take them." The battle erupted in chaos. Shadowtech soldiers fired weapons that shot streams of dark energy, but Lyra's royal guards created shields of pure light. The cavern filled with flashing beams and the sound of energy weapons. Jake wasn't helpless this time. Before they'd entered the mines, Lyra had given him a small crystal that attached to his wrist. "A simple shield generator," she'd explained. "And something more." Now he activated it, and a protective field of energy surrounded him. Lyra was incredible to watch. She moved between the crystal formations like a dance, each gesture sending waves of bioenergy that made plants burst from the stone walls. Vines wrapped around Shadowtech soldiers, while crystals redirected their energy weapons. But something was wrong. Jake noticed it first. Some of the royal guards were firing at their own allies. "Lyra," he shouted, "we've got traitors." 3 royal guards revealed themselves, their armor changing to show Shadowtech colors. They'd been infiltrators all along, and now they had the loyal guards surrounded. "Did you think you were the only ones who could disguise yourselves?" Commander Vex laughed. "We've had agents in your court for months, Your Majesty." Lyra's face showed pain, not from any wound but from the betrayal. Yet her voice remained strong. "Jake," she called out, "the crystals. Remember what I taught you about resonance." Jake understood. While planning their defense, Lyra had explained how the crystals could amplify bioenergy. He pressed his hand against the nearest crystal formation, focusing like she'd shown him. To his amazement, he could feel the life force running through the stone, the same energy that Lyra used. The crystal began to glow under his touch, then others joined it, creating a network of light. Lyra placed her hand on another crystal, and suddenly the entire cavern was filled with blinding purple radiance. The effect was extraordinary. The disguised Shadowtech agents were revealed, their fake armor melting away. The real royal guards rallied, trapping the exposed traitors with walls of light. Commander Vex snarled and fired directly at Jake, but Lyra was faster. She threw herself between them, catching the dark energy blast with her bare hands. Instead of hurting her, the energy transformed, turning from black to purple as she redirected it into the crystal network. The cavern's crystal formations pulsed like a heartbeat. Waves of bioenergy swept outward, and everywhere they touched, life bloomed. Flowers, vines, and glowing fungi covered the walls. The very air seemed to come alive with floating spores of light. "Impossible," Vex gasped. "You're channeling the planet's own life force." "No," Lyra said, standing tall as energy coursed around her. "I'm not controlling it. I'm asking for its help." "That's what you never understood, Commander. Bioharmony isn't about power over life. It's about connecting with it." She looked at Jake, and a silent understanding passed between them. He pressed both hands against his crystal, focusing all his energy. Lyra did the same with hers. The crystal network blazed like captured sunlight. Captain Solaris, seeing what they planned, ordered the loyal guards back, shields at maximum. The cavern erupted with pure bioenergy. When the light faded, the Shadowtech forces lay unconscious, their liquid metal armor transformed into harmless puddles. But the cavern itself had changed too. The walls were now covered in bioluminescent life, and the crystals hummed with power. "It's beautiful," Jake said, looking at the transformed cave. Lyra smiled, but her expression quickly turned serious as she received a message through her armor. "The Shadowtech warships are starting their attack run." She looked around the crystal cavern, now thrumming with Earth's own life force. "But thanks to you, Jake, we're ready for them." She touched the largest crystal formation, and its light pulsed up through the rock, through the ground, and into the sky above. The real battle for Earth was about to begin, and now they had the planet's own power on their side. Commander Vex, still conscious but weakened, laughed darkly. "You think this is over? Our full fleet approaches. Earth will still burn." "No," Lyra said, her voice carrying that strange mix of gentleness and absolute authority. "It won't. because now we know who the traitors are and Earth. She looked at Jake with pride. Earth has shown it's ready to join the galactic community, whether your empire likes it or not. The crystals pulsed again, stronger this time, as if the planet itself was preparing for what came next. The sky above Earth had turned into a battlefield. Through the crystal network's projection, Jake could see dozens of shadow tech warships emerging from hyperspace, massive black vessels that looked like twisted metal thorns. They faced off against Lyra's crystal ships, which glowed with bioenergy and had actual forests growing on their hulls. In the transformed mine cavern, Lyra stood at the center of a circle of massive crystals, using them like a command center. Her marks pulsed with purple light as she coordinated her fleet's defense of Earth. The captured Commander Vex and his troops were secured by energy fields, watched closely by the loyal Royal Guards. Their main fleet is targeting major population centers, Captain Solaris reported, his armor displaying tactical holograms. They're trying to force us to split our defenses. Lyra's face showed fierce determination. They underestimate Earth's power. Jake, are you ready? Jake stood at another crystal formation, still amazed that he could help channel the planet's energy. The crystal technology Lyra had given him had bonded with his body, creating flowing patterns of light under his skin. Not quite like Lyra's royal marks, but similar. Ready. But are you sure this will work? Earth's life force is incredibly strong, Lyra said. Stronger than any planet I've encountered. That's why the Shadowtech Empire wants it so badly. She smiled at Jake. And you have a natural talent for bioharmony. Together, we can activate the planet's defense network. Defense network? Jake asked. Earth doesn't have a. He stopped as Lyra pressed her hand against the central crystal. Images appeared in the light. Ancient structures buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, older than human civilization. They looked like massive crystal roots spreading through the planet's crust, all connected to natural formations like the very cave they stood in. Your ancestors called them ley lines, Lyra explained. They're actually a biomechanical defense system, planted by my people eons ago, when we helped seed life on Earth. We knew someday the planet would need to protect itself. Above them, the battle intensified. Shadowtech ships fired beams of dark energy that seemed to eat away at reality itself. Lyra's fleet responded with weapons of pure light, while living vines as thick as buildings grew between ships, creating organic shields. Suddenly, the cavern shook. A Shadowtech energy beam had punched through the ground, nearly hitting their location. Cracks appeared in the ceiling, and dust rained down. They're trying to collapse the cave, Captain Solaris shouted. They know what we're doing. Jake watched in horror as more beams struck the ground above them. But then something incredible happened. The glowing plants that covered the cavern walls began to move, their roots growing rapidly to reinforce the cracking stone. The entire cave was keeping itself together through pure bioenergy. Now, Lyra commanded, while the planet's life force is active. Jake pressed his hands against his crystal formation as Lyra did the same with hers. He could feel the energy flowing through him, stronger than ever before. All around them, the Royal Guards added their power to the network. The cave filled with blinding light as the ancient defense system activated. Energy surged through crystal veins buried miles deep, spreading across the entire planet. Where it reached the surface, massive crystal spires erupted from the ground, each one a combination of ancient technology and living crystal. In orbit, the Shadowtech fleet faltered as Earth itself joined the battle. Beams of pure bioenergy shot from the crystal spires, forming a protective web around the planet. Their dark energy weapons couldn't penetrate it. But the Shadowtech Empire had one last trick. Their flagship, a vessel twice the size of the others, opened like a deadly flower to reveal a massive cannon. Dark energy gathered at its center, building to impossible levels. By the stars, Captain Solaris breathed. They're going to use the Void Driver. That weapon could crack the planet's crust. Commander Vex laughed from his prison of light. You should have surrendered when you had the chance, Your Majesty. Some victories require sacrifices. Jake looked at Lyra and saw real fear in her star-filled eyes. Can Earth's defense network stop that weapon? No, she said quietly. But I can. She turned to Jake, and suddenly he knew what she planned. Lyra, no, it's too dangerous. My powers combined with Earth's life force. She touched his face gently. It's the only way. But I need you to help anchor me, or the energy will tear me apart. Before he could argue, she began to glow with intense purple light. Her royal armor transformed, becoming more crystalline, merging with the ancient defense system. Jake grabbed her hand, feeling the energy surge through both of them. Lyra rose into the air, suspended by beams of light from the crystals. Her voice echoed with power that wasn't entirely her own. You wish to see true bioharmony, Commander. Watch carefully. The crystal network blazed with blinding radiance. Every plant, every tree, every blade of grass on Earth began to glow. Lyra channeled it all, becoming a conduit for an entire planet's life force. The Void Driver fired its planet-killing beam. But where it met Lyra's bioenergy, something unprecedented happened. The dark energy didn't just stop, it transformed. Like a cosmic version of what she'd done in the cave, Lyra turned the weapon's deadly power into pure life energy. The transformed energy swept through the Shadowtech fleet. Where it touched their liquid metal ships, the metal came alive, transforming into actual living tissue. Plants burst from their hulls. Crystal formations grew through their weapons. Their ships became gardens in space. Commander Vex watched in disbelief as his mighty fleet was transformed into a floating forest of light. What have you done? Showed them a better way, Lyra said, her voice weak as she floated back down. Jake caught her as the glow faded. Their ships aren't destroyed. They're transformed. Now they can learn to work with life instead of trying to control it. Through the crystal network's projection, they could see the Shadowtech crews emerging from their transformed ships, their liquid metal armor now flowing with the same bioenergy that powered Lyra's technology. The war was over, not through destruction, but through transformation. But victory had come at a cost. Lyra lay barely conscious in Jake's arms, her royal marks flickering weakly. Captain Solaris rushed forward with medical equipment. Stay with me, Jake whispered to her. You still need to teach me how all this works. Earth's apparently part of the galactic community now, remember. Lyra managed a small smile, her star-filled eyes focusing on him. First thing you should know, a queen always keeps her promises. Above them, Earth's new crystal spires glowed like beacons, announcing to the galaxy that this was now a protected world, not just by the Starlight Empire, but by its own awakened power. The real question was, what would humanity do with this gift? Commander Vex, watching the transformation of his fleet, finally understood. You could have destroyed us. Why didn't you? Because, Lyra said softly, her strength slowly returning. That's not what bioharmony is about. Life adapts. Life transforms. Life finds a way to work together. She looked at Jake. Humans taught me that. The crystals pulsed with gentle light, and somewhere in orbit, a new day was dawning for both Earth and the galaxy. The crystal cave had become a makeshift hospital. Lyra lay on a bed of softly glowing moss, her royal marks still flickering weakly after the massive display of power that had transformed the Shadowtech fleet. Jake hadn't left her side for hours, watching as the medical crystals around her pulsed with healing energy. Her life force is stabilizing, the royal healer said, checking readings on a crystal display. But channeling an entire planet's bioenergy, it's never been done before. There may be complications. As if confirming his words, Lyra's marks suddenly flared with intense purple light. The plants covering the cave walls reacted instantly, growing at impossible speeds, their vines reaching toward her like they were trying to help. Jake, she whispered, her eyes opening. But instead of their usual star-filled purple, they were glowing white. Something's wrong. The connection. It's too strong. Captain Solaris burst into the chamber. My queen, we have a situation. The transformed Shadowtech ships, their bioconversion is spreading. Through the crystal network's projection, they could see what he meant. The living metal of the converted ships was growing, sending out crystalline branches that were connecting with each other. A new structure was forming in Earth's orbit, a massive garden of starlight and living metal. It's beautiful, Jake said, but why is it happening? The royal healer's face showed concern. The Queen's power didn't just transform their ships, it awakened something. The ancient defense system, the planet's life force, the transformed Shadowtech technology. They're all responding to each other, creating something new. Lyra tried to sit up but fell back, energy crackling around her. I can feel all of it. Every plant, every crystal, every drop of transformed metal. It's too much life force. Commander Vex, who had been quietly observing from his energy cell, spoke up. Your bioharmony transformation didn't just change our ships, did it? It changed the fundamental way our technology interacts with life itself. And now, he gestured to the growing structure in orbit. Now it's evolving on its own. Jake noticed something else through the crystal projection. Similar transformations were happening on Earth's surface. The crystal spires that had emerged during the battle were growing, connecting with each other through networks of living crystal and transformed metal. Cities around the world reported strange phenomena. Plants developing metallic properties, technology spontaneously merging with nearby life forms. The balance is shifting, Lyra said, her voice carrying echoes of power that weren't entirely her own. Earth's awakening. It's happening too fast. Humans aren't ready for this level of bioharmony. She tried to stand, and this time Jake helped her up. The moment they touched, energy surged between them. Jake's borrowed crystal technology resonated with her royal marks, and suddenly he could see what she saw. The vast network of life and energy that now connected everything on and around Earth. We have to stabilize it, Lyra said, but I'm too weak to control it alone. You don't have to, Jake said. An idea was forming in his mind. You said bioharmony isn't about control. It's about connection, about working together. Maybe that's the answer. Captain Solaris stepped forward. My queen, the human is right. Look. The crystal projection showed something remarkable. Where the transformations were occurring, humans weren't running in fear. They were approaching the change areas with wonder. Some were even helping to guide the growth of the crystal formations, instinctively understanding how to work with the new forms of life. Of course, Commander Vex said softly, this is what our scientists never understood. Bioharmony can't be weaponized or controlled because it's not about power. It's about cooperation between all forms of life. Lyra's marks stabilized slightly as she watched. But the energy is still building. The transformation is spreading too quickly. We need to. She stopped as a new alert came through the crystal network. Deep space sensors had detected multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. But these weren't Shadowtech vessels. Their designs were completely different, organic yet geometric, representing dozens of different alien civilizations. The galactic community, Captain Solaris breathed. They've come to witness Earth's awakening. No, Lyra said, her voice stronger now. They've come to help. She turned to Jake. Every advanced civilization had to go through this, the moment when their planet's life force awakened and merged with their technology. Some failed, their worlds burning out from the sudden surge of power. But others learned to work with it, Jake finished, to guide it. Lyra nodded. Earth's transformation is happening faster than any in recorded history. That's why they're here. Together, we might be able to help guide the process. The alien ships took position around Earth, forming a perfect geometric pattern. Beams of energy in every color imaginable connected their vessels, creating a stabilizing network around the planet. But something was still wrong. Lyra suddenly cried out in pain, her marks flaring again. The cave shook as waves of uncontrolled bioenergy pulsed through the crystal networks. "The connection is too strong," she gasped. "I can't separate myself from it." Jake grabbed her hand, feeling the overwhelming surge of power. Through their connection, he could sense what was happening. Lyra's consciousness was being pulled into the vast network of Earth's awakening life force. She was losing herself in the immensity of it. "Stay with me," he said desperately. "Focus on my voice. You're not just the queen of the Starlight Empire, you're Lyra. Remember?" Commander Vex suddenly spoke up from his cell. "The royal marks. They're not just decorative, are they? They're a biological control system, helping you channel and regulate bioenergy." The royal healer's eyes widened. "Of course. And when she channeled the planet's power, it overloaded them," Jake finished. He looked at the crystal technology that had bonded with his own body, showing patterns similar to Lyra's marks. But maybe. He pressed his hand against the nearest crystal formation, channeling energy like Lyra had taught him. But instead of trying to control the power, he offered himself as a secondary conduit, taking some of the strain off her overloaded systems. The effect was immediate. Lyra's marks stabilized, their purple light steady and strong. The uncontrolled growth of plants and crystals slowed, becoming more purposeful. Above them, the alien ship's stabilizing network pulsed with approval. They were succeeding, not by controlling Earth's awakening, but by working together to guide it. Commander Vex watched in amazement. All our research, all our attempts to weaponize bioharmony. And the answer was so simple. Life helping life. Lyra stood straighter, her strength returning as Jake helped balance the energy load. Through the crystal projection, they could see the transformed Shadowtech fleet starting to move with purpose, its living metal and crystal structures forming beautiful, functional patterns in orbit. "Earth's story is changing," Lyra said, her voice full of wonder. "And so is the galaxy's." She looked at Jake, her star-filled eyes now showing their normal purple hue. "Thank you for reminding me what bioharmony truly means." But before he could respond, new alarms blared through the crystal network. The Royal Guard's expressions turned grave. "My queen," Captain Solaris said urgently, "we're detecting temporal distortions, the massive release of bioenergy. It's having an unexpected effect on space-time itself." The crystal projection showed rifts forming in the sky. Tears in reality that sparked with both dark energy and bioharmony power. Something was coming through, something that would change everything once again. "The real test," Lyra said softly, "is just beginning." The temporal rifts in the sky looked like cracks in reality itself, edges glowing with both dark energy and bioharmony light. Through the crystal cave's projection, Jake and Lyra watched as massive shapes emerged from the tears in spacetime. Twisted versions of Shadowtech ships, but these were part organic, part crystal, and part living metal. They looked like they had been through centuries of uncontrolled bioharmony evolution. "Impossible," Commander Vex whispered. "Those are our ships, but wrong. Change." "Not wrong," Lyra said, her voice grave. "Future. When we transformed your fleet, the energy surge created a temporal feedback loop. These ships, they're from a timeline where the transformation went out of control. The future ships opened fire, but their weapons were unlike anything they'd seen. Beams of corrupted bioenergy that turned everything they touched into twisted, chaotic life forms. Plants with metal thorns, crystals that screamed, living metal that consumed everything it touched. The time stream is bleeding through," Captain Solaris reported, checking readings on his armor. "These ships, they're trying to ensure their timeline becomes reality." Jake felt Lyra's hand tighten on his. Through their shared bioharmony connection, he could sense her fear, not of the ships themselves, but of what they represented. A future where the power of life itself had become a nightmare. "We have to stop them," she said. "But our fleet is still recovering from the transformation, and Earth's defense network isn't fully stabilized. The alien ships that had come to help with Earth's awakening moved to intercept the future fleet, but the corrupted bioweapons tore through their defenses easily. Whatever these future ships had become, they had centuries of twisted evolution behind them. Then Jake noticed something through the crystal projection. Where the corrupted bioenergy beams hit Earth's surface, the planet's natural life force was fighting back. Plants, animals, even bacteria were working together to contain and transform the corruption. "Look," he said, "Earth knows how to handle this. It's not trying to destroy the corrupted energy. It's purifying it, bringing it back into balance." Lyra's eyes widened. Of course, pure bioharmony isn't about destruction or control. It's about transformation and balance, Commander Vex finished, standing up in his energy cell. "Like what you did to our fleet. The future ships are powerful because they're pure chaos. But that means they've lost the true meaning of bioharmony." A plan began to form. Lyra turned to Jake, her star-filled eyes glowing with purpose. "We need to do what Earth is doing, but on a larger scale. Create a purification wave that will affect all of space around the planet." "The crystal network," Jake said, understanding. "If we can channel energy through all of it at once, it would kill you both," the royal healer interrupted. "Even with your shared connection, channeling that much power." But Commander Vex stepped forward. "Not if they had help." He looked at his transformed soldiers. "Our liquid metal armor. It's part of the bioharmony network now. We could help channel the energy, spread the load." Captain Solaris nodded. "The Royal Guard will help too. And the alien ships." He gestured to where the galactic fleet was holding a defensive line. "They're already networked together." "A galaxy working together," Lyra said softly. "Like it always should have been." They moved quickly. The Royal Guards formed a circle around Jake and Lyra, with Commander Vex and his soldiers joining them. Through the crystal network, the alien ships linked their bioenergy systems into the growing web of power. The future ships noticed what they were doing. They turned their corrupted weapons toward the cave, firing everything they had. But Earth itself rose to defend them. The crystal spires that had emerged during the first battle grew at impossible speeds, forming a protective dome of living crystal. "Ready?" Lyra asked, looking at Jake. He nodded, taking her hand. The crystal technology that had bonded with him pulsed in harmony with her royal marks. Together, they pressed their free hands against the central crystal formation. Power began to flow, not just through them, but through everyone in the cave, through the alien ships in orbit, through every plant and crystal on Earth. Pure bioharmony energy, building to levels never before seen. The future ships sensed the danger. They combined their corrupted energy into one massive beam, powerful enough to crack a planet. It struck Earth's crystal dome. And in that moment, Lyra and Jake released the purification wave. It was beautiful. A sphere of pure bioharmony energy expanded from Earth, transformed by the planet's life force into something new. Where it touched the corrupted beam, the energy turned pure again. Where it reached the future ships, their twisted forms began to heal, centuries of chaotic evolution being gently corrected. The temporal rifts themselves were affected. As the purification wave passed through them, they didn't close. Instead, they transformed, becoming bridges rather than tiers. Through them, Jake could see other versions of Earth, other timelines where humanity had taken different paths toward joining the galactic community. The time streams. Lyra breathed. "They're stabilizing, coming into harmony." The future ships hung in space, their forms now beautiful rather than twisted. They looked like gardens in space, but natural ones, life and technology working together as they should. Commander Vex stared in wonder. "You didn't destroy them. You didn't even send them back. You healed them," Jake finished, "brought them into balance." Through their shared connection, Jake and Lyra could feel something else happening. Earth's awakening was stabilizing too. The planet's life force had learned from the experience, finding its own balance between growth and control. Humans around the world were already adapting, instinctively learning to work with the new forms of life around them. The alien ships began sending messages, not just to them, but to all of humanity. Welcomes, offers of friendship, invitations to join the galactic community. Earth's handling of the time crisis had proven beyond doubt that humans were ready. "So what happens now?" Jake asked, looking at Lyra. She smiled, her royal marks glowing with healthy light. Now the real adventure begins. Earth will need ambassadors to help guide it into the galactic age. People who understand both humanity and bioharmony. People like us, Jake said, understanding. The crystal cave had changed during the battle. The plants and crystals had grown together into something new. A combination of natural life, ancient technology, and transformed shadow-tech metal. It looked like a garden from the future, but a healthy one, full of possibility. Commander Vex stepped forward, his transformed armor flowing like liquid starlight. "My queen, my friend, the shadow-tech empire will need guidance too. Perhaps it's time for both our peoples to learn a new way." "Not just your peoples," came a new voice. One of the alien ship captains had transported down, a being of living crystal and light. "What happened here today? It changes everything. The barriers between organic and technological, between different species, different times, they're all breaking down. We need to learn to grow together." Lyra looked at Jake, then at the diverse group around them. Royal guards, transformed shadow-tech soldiers, alien visitors, all standing together in a garden of possibility. "Then let's grow together," she said, "not as separate empires or species, but as life itself." After all, she smiled, her star-filled eyes twinkling. That's what bioharmony is all about. Above them, the healed future ships began to harmonize with their present counterparts, creating a display of light and life that could be seen from every corner of Earth. It was a sign to all who saw it. A new age was beginning, one where the power of life itself would guide the way to the stars. And in the crystal cave that had become a garden of destiny, a forest ranger and an alien queen held hands, ready to help guide humanity toward that bright future, one step at a time.